Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, June the 17th, and welcome to our commentary. Just a quick heads up. I have a post over at the American Thinker today. You can check it out directly at the American Thinker. If you follow me on my blog or Twitter, I put them there as well. And it's a post about Mexico, where I'm talking about the fact that there are concerns, especially in the investor class. There are concerns that Mexico, with all of these reforms that they want to pass, that Mexico is basically going to be a country run by one president without any of the checks and balances that you want to see in a more transparent and democratic society. So the investors are showing their concerns by let's say the drop in the value of the peso. And at some point this is going to have to get addressed. The incoming president, Claudia Sheinbaum, is going to have to basically talk to the investor class and say, look, yes, we're going to work for these reforms, but I'm going to be responsible in how I address these new powers that I'm going to have. But I don't think that's going to be enough for the investors. I think the investors want to see at least the judiciary in Mexico remain independent. And whether that happens or not, I don't know. But there are concerns south of the border, and they're showing up in the value of the Mexican peso and a little shakiness in the stock market, but not as much as the value of the peso. Even the United States is publicly encouraging Mexico not to do these reforms, that to keep in place some kind of checks and balances, so that at least people don't feel that everything is one way or the other. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening. It's been almost 2 weeks now since President Trump was convicted in Manhattan in that ridiculous 34 counts. And what's amazing to me is that the polls have not changed. I mean, if you look at the polling data today, it's roughly the same. Sometimes they move in Trump's direction, sometimes they move in Biden's direction, but at the end of the day, it's still Trump ahead. And all of the people who invest money, these houses that where people actually put money and bet on candidates, Trump is winning by a substantial margin. So the trial in New York did not have the results that the Democrats were looking for. The convicted felon message is not working. I mean, it's working with Democrats, obviously, but it's not working with Republicans or independents. And that is, I think Democrats are going to have to reconsider this whole case, this whole campaign of using the judicial system to go after Trump, because it's not working. And on the contrary, they are losing votes. They are losing standing, I think, with people who see it for what it is and just pure politics, absolutely pure politics. What was done to Trump in Manhattan. I have a post coming out Tuesday morning based on an article that I read about. More and more colleges are saying that the students that they are taking in from high school cannot read or write at the levels that you're supposed to if you graduate from high school. More and more schools are graduating students, even the ones going to college, who are simply not up to speed when it comes to reading and writing. And that, of course, presents a lot of problems. Not only do the colleges have to go back and basically do, in essence, re-educate these kids and teach them how to read and write, but it also creates a lot of problems because many of them who don't go to college and they go out in the real world and get a job, they're going to find out that it's very difficult to compete in the real world if you don't have basic math and reading skills. And this is a real shame on the public education system. I don't know how else to say it, but what an absolute disgrace that we have a public education system graduating students like that. And, I believe in school choice. I think school choice is better for the parents. But one of the reasons why school choice is better is because there's a lot more accountability. The parents are directly involved in the school. They're the ones, after all, selecting the schools, and in some cases, selecting the teachers. And I think that puts the parents involved 100%. And one of the reasons I support school choice. But when you see results like this, where you're graduating kids who cannot read and write, and the colleges have to give them all kinds of remedial training to bring them up to speed. I mean, what that tells me is that our public education system is failing, and the politicians need to start looking into it. I mean, if you believe, as the Democrats like to say here in Texas, if you believe in community schools, well, you better make sure that your community schools are graduating kids who can read and write. Otherwise, frankly, you're not helping these kids one bit by keeping them in your community schools. By the way, I think that probably sometime next year after the elections, when the new legislature takes over in Texas, I think you will see that we now have enough votes to bring about school choice in Texas. Vouchers is what the governor is after. So I think you will see that. He will call for a legislative session in 2025, and I think you will see enough votes in Texas to have a voucher program, which is, I think, good for the parents and good for the students, especially the students, because they're the ones who are going to have to go out there with that diploma and make a living. You know, Jonathan Turley is a real, what can I say? He's a man of great wisdom. He's a really good man. And he has an article today that I would recommend. It's on his website, jonathanturley.org, I think it is, or .com, one of those. And you can find it, I'm pretty sure, if you put Jonathan Turley, I'm pretty sure you'll find the article that I'm talking about. It's his latest article. And he's talking about the corruption of Attorney General Garland. Attorney General Garland, I guess the only good news about him is that he didn't get into the Supreme Court. Remember, he was President Obama's selection to get into the Supreme Court in 2016, and thanks to Senator McConnell of Kentucky at the time, he didn't have a vote, so he never got to go to the Supreme Court. And in retrospect, that may have been one of the best things that Mitch McConnell ever did, because this man is not doing a very good job as Attorney General. And now, he refuses to release that audio. And now he's been subpoenaed or contempt of Congress of whatever it is. And he says he's not going to release it. It's a huge mistake on the part of the Attorney General, because, he's claiming some kind of executive privilege. But the fact is, executive privilege has nothing to do with his case. This is not a conversation between the president or one of his advisors discussing matters of national policy. On an issue like that, I always support the president, because the president should get information from his advisors that is private and confidential. But in this case, this is the conversation that President Biden had with the investigator, Robert Hur, who was doing the investigation of the documents. And in that investigation, Robert Hur concluded that, yes, Senator and then Vice President Biden had documents he wasn't supposed to have. But at the end, they decided not to prosecute him because, he's an old man with a bad memory. Well, I like to know what Joe Biden sounded like that led the special counsel to draw a conclusion like that. It probably would have been better for the special counsel to have used a different reason not to prosecute him. But saying that he's an old man with a bad memory the year that he's running for re-election, I think the American people are entitled to hear that audio. And I think the Attorney General should give it up. Why not? Just give it up. Well, at this point, what's going to be on that audio? Are we going to see, President Biden confused or whatever? Well, if he is confused, we need to know that. This guy wants to be president for another 4 years. I think we're entitled to know what kind of mental state the president is. By the way, interesting story that came out today in the Daily Mail. This is a British newspaper out of London, where they say that they pretty much have already a plan to replace President Biden. The Democrats, that is, the inner circle, have a plan to replace Joe Biden. And, they didn't go into a lot of the details, but they say that they have something cooking that they will announce at the convention, which is, of course, 2 months away, that they will announce a replacement. Who that replacement is, I don't know. But I heard something about Hillary Clinton potentially being the replacement. I wouldn't put it beyond the Clintons. I mean, they sure have enough support within the party to do something like that. The other big one that everybody's talking about is Michelle Obama, but all indications are that Michelle Obama doesn't want to do it. She just doesn't want to do it. She's just not interested in politics. But apparently, according to the Daily Mail and all of their sources, it's a done deal that Joe Biden is going to be replaced. I'm not really surprised. Again, just look at the man when you see him, in his appearances. I don't know who came up with this trip to Germany or to France. I mean, to send an 82-year-old man on a plane to France and then to Italy and then back to the United States, out to California. I mean, at some point, there has to be a Nancy Reagan in this White House. Remember, Nancy Reagan used to object to the staff pushing President Reagan back then, especially toward the end of his second term, when he was no question that he was showing signs of age. And you also have to remember that he was shot in his first year as president. Although he did recover, I'm sure that took quite a physical toll on him. But there doesn't seem to be a Nancy Reagan in this White House who cares about, the well-being of her husband. I mean, Jill Biden seems to be all about, pushing her husband as much as possible. That you sure get the impression that she likes that job as first lady and wants to keep it. But then, according to this article, she's not going to keep her job because they're going to nominate somebody else. So we'll see how that turns out. Well, if you like history, on this day back in 1972, June 17th, was the break-in into the Watergate building in New York. At first, it was just a meaningless story being covered by the local reporters. But eventually, of course, it became Watergate, what we now call Watergate, and became the scandal that brought down Richard Nixon. So that happened on this day in 1972, 52 years ago, if my math is right. Yeah, 52 years ago today. What a time flies. Time flies. But of course, Watergate and Nixon became kind of synonymous. And there was a lot more to the Nixon presidency than Watergate. Believe me, there was. He was actually a pretty successful president. He ended the war in Vietnam. And, he was actually a pretty successful president. But unfortunately, Watergate kind of derailed him. And at the end, he resigned in August of 74. So Watergate, the break-in, happened on this day in 1972. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.